Okay? So I believe we are going to start with the question, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so go ahead.
I don't find this text.
Okay, so let me read what I think was close to your question. And it says, it's from Jung talking about the shadow,
Mhm.
and it's paragraph 447.
Just a moment, Сьюзан. Девочки, это тот вопрос, который у меня не получилось задать на прошлой встрече. 442 параграф оттуда. I tell my colleagues about reason this question.
Okay. So I think the sentence was, the mythological motifs are called archetypes. That is, typical modes or forms in which the collective phenomena are experienced. Was that it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And your question was to understand the sentence, correct?
To understand about the reason or aim which we can saw in archetype. Next, if I clearly next.
Yeah, let me read the next sentence. He says, one can explain the disorders in the psyche, he's saying, causally, but such an explanation is unsatisfactory. It is easier to understand archetypes by their aim rather than their causality.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. Okay, so I pondered that sentence all as well. So the aim is what counts more than the cause, is what is saying.
Mm-hmm.
So let me go back. Jung refers somewhere to the archetypes as like a riverbed, and each of us will fill it differently. So we all have a certain cause of how we're going to live out the archetype. And then each of us has got a different, it will form a different aim. Right?
Yes.
So, yeah. So each of us in a way, so why it's hard is that Jung is very confusing about the concept of the archetype. It's just confusing. But if you look at it, we can ask ourselves, how are each of us living out, how would we say it? Which archetype are we living out? Okay. Each of us have got the archetype of, we could say inside of us, mother, father, child, feminine, masculine, shadow, ego, persona. How do each of us live it out? We all might come from a similar cause in a way, but we are going to be different as we live it out. Just as we look at each of us, we are all dressed differently. We have a different aim, but we all come from a similar cause. Even though we have different background, we have different origin, but we all come from the mother, the father, a country, a history, and how we will live it is individual. The aim is individual. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Does anyone else have a question before we get into this next material?
I think we can start and during this text, maybe we ask.
Yeah. Yeah, let's start. Okay, but let me ask you, did you understand that explanation about the archetype? Okay, I'm gonna throw in another confusion. Okay,
Это та, которая говорила, что несколько лет не разберется.
Thank you for your speech because it's really slowly and clearly for me. Thank you very much.
You are welcome for sure. Okay, but let me also say that in current Jungian thought, there is a total question about the value of the archetype. Many Jungians say the archetype can't be this inherited thing we have. It's not just because you're born, you have this. No, it is more, I think, this place of how do we fill the space of being ourselves? And I just want to say that Jung so much spoke about archetypes, but always different. When you read through the collected works, it's this, it's this, it's this. And now many Jungians are questioning the whole idea of archetype. Surely I would question as well. It's inherited? What does that mean? What does that mean? I don't know. I don't think we're born with an inherited deal.
I think in different place, in different archetype, we can answer different.
Yeah, but you see, that accentuates the aim, because each of us is going to have another interpretation of archetype, of life, of our individual life, how we are going to be aware of ourselves, not according to some general idea, but individual. I think that's what's incredibly important. Do we all have, you know, masculine, feminine, shadow, persona, ego? Yeah, but how we live it is what is special. And how we are influenced is special as well.
May I add a little bit?
Please.
If I don't mistake, in personal and collective unconscious, what last topic, I found for me very important point. I couldn't right now found it, but idea was about archetype, like that is a germ of organ. It like body has different organs, and psyche has, but not organs, but began of that organs. It can be grow in the beak, and each person have the same organ. And in psyche we have that beginning of that archetype, and it grow inside us in different form, but we have it.
Very true. It is the same way as we get born into a certain family. It does not mean we are going to be like that family, right? We are going to be like us. We all have the same organs, kinda, but we're going to live them out differently. Body and psyche both. Yes, it's true.
In the another side, we can see in this, I think about it when I read this paragraph about alpha, beta, beyond.
About what? Sorry.
About alpha and beta
Of Bion.
Bion, yes. Because he told about, ой, ребят, не знаю сейчас-то, преформы, которые будут потом
Preforms.
preform. And I know that Bion visited 2 or 3 lectures of Jung.
Yes.
After that, he gave this theory.
Yeah. So you could, even with that example,
Mhm.
could say what got passed on from one to the other. Bion made it his own way. Jung had his way.
Mhm.
It might be a similar energy lived out differently.
What is my way?
My way. Yeah. Yeah. You know what? That's why Jung called it the process of individuation. Because we are all going to do it differently, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's what's special. You don't want to be the same at all. Yeah. Even twins are not really the same. I mean, they're the same, but they're not the same. So, yeah. Okay. Shall we go on? Did you read the effects of the unconscious upon consciousness? Did you read any of it? From page 127. I think one of the absolute special pieces of Jung is how he regards the unconscious and its important connection to consciousness. I mean, can you imagine walking around and only thinking that the world is conscious?
Mhm.
It's like, it feels too flat. So the unconscious adds dimension and perspective to our conscious life. The unconscious does. Okay, so if we start at paragraph 202, Jung is differentiating himself again from Freud. Again, he
Mhm.
says, in Freud's view, as most people know, the contents of the unconscious are reducible to infantile tendencies, which are repressed because of their incompatible character. But Jung says, this is only part of the story. We're not just personal, unconscious, bad memories, things that happened when you were a kid that you didn't like and they got repressed. He's saying we all live a bigger story than that, which we do, don't we? You can see it in your dreams. Like, how come you have this character that you don't know? Where did that character come from? You know, you don't have that character in your life. It wasn't around in your childhood. What is it doing there? And that's what Jung helps open us to. It's beyond that personal hurt or the personal issues. It brings up bigger issues. When you work with people, have you ever noticed how their dreams sometimes, and your own, are like fairy tales? Almost the same. Someone has a dream, I'm going into the forest. Oh, really? There you
Yes,
go.
we saw that you tell about blue, как это синяя борода? Your seminar about fairy tale.
Yeah, Bluebeard.
Bluebeard.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, exactly. But you see, that's a good point. Bluebeard is in the unconscious of us all. He's a bad guy. He's a bad guy. He kills the wives. He kills the feminine. However, we all know people that do that, don't we? And if you have somebody in your dream who feels like Bluebeard, you want to watch out, because he's a character that lives inside of all of us. And this is what Jung is getting to, is in the unconscious live these characters. You want to know them so they don't grab you and allow you to make lousy decisions about your life. Because somebody could come into your office and say, I met this person online. They remind me of Bluebeard, or the shooter, or the axe murderer. Why are you going out with them then? Do you see what's going on inside that is destructive and mean and a killer? In no uncertain terms, a killer. You want to take it very seriously. So Jung is deepening what he interprets as Freud, okay, from his ideas. Okay, so yeah, so here's where this is where Jung disagrees as well. He says, by means of analysis. So,
sorry, Susan, I can silent. What you answered if your client began session this phrase, these fantasies, sentences about a bluebird or cure?
Well, I'm going to ask all of you what you would do, and I will tell you then, because it is true. People do say that. What would you say if someone came in and they said, I met so-and-so online. They're really nice. They took me to a great restaurant. We went to a super place. That person seemed wonderful, but something doesn't feel right. So what would any of you say? See, because the problem with Bluebeard is that Bluebeard had a lot of money. Bluebeard looked okay. Well, he had a blue beard, but okay, people overlook that. But the issue is to be taken in by the persona exterior, and the inside tells one, wait a second, what are you doing? So I'm quite direct, and I would say, is this person a killer? Gonna really hurt you? And what does it represent about a part of you? And are you carrying that in your unconscious? How did you meet this person when there's a million people to meet? How did you find that one? It creates consciousness. Yeah.
Or can we add what door I'm like a specialist opened in previous session?
Pardon me, say it again.
If I was an analyst, I think what door I opened in previous session and why?
Well, you know what? Let me ask you, is it the analyst that opens the door? Or is the door opened because of the two people together who are opening the door? Do you see what I mean? So it isn't really the analyst alone that opens the door, but it is the interaction between that opens the door and creates the safety to be able to explore a horrible figure like Bluebeard.
Yes, we can show a different level of meaning, and we can tell only if we being in this place, in that with that analysand, and it may be a different way with another analysand, with another analysis.
Yes, however, things come up when it is the right time. So some people have an analysis and they discover this. In the next analysis, they will discover different things because it is a different time
Mhm.
and they are able to.
And the analysis different another too.
Yeah, well, yes, because of the energy between. So what is it? The issue is, do you resonate with the person who is the analyst? If there's enough connection and resonance, then the unconscious can really come forward. It's safe enough. It has to be safe. There's too much in the unconscious that you want to have enough safety and trust in the person that you're working with. Yeah, has to be there. Especially, well, not even with figures like Bluebeard, with any, just with life. You want to feel solid. Yeah. Okay. So, however, Jung on paragraph 203 says that he says the unconscious has another side to it that includes not only repressed contents, but all psychic material that lies below the threshold of consciousness. All material. So this opens, let me see. So he says, in that case, the removal of repression ought to endow a person with a prodigious memory, which would henceforth forget nothing. So is it possible that in the unconscious, we forget nothing? I mean, it's a huge concept, so that we can find ourselves. Have you ever worked with anyone or yourself? You have a dream, or they have a dream, and it takes place in 1852. They weren't alive in 1852, but they are in 1852. Because in the unconscious are all kinds of things. I give you an example. Someone recently dreamt about a codex. You know, a codex, Jung talks about, they're the medieval manuscript, Middle Ages, 1400s, 1600s, alchemical manuscript. This person had never seen one, didn't know about alchemy, had no idea what a codex was. And so, of course, they looked it up online. Still, it's like a book yet to be opened. Think about that psychologically. A part of themselves yet to be opened, carrying symbols and images that had little to do with their present life. Why did they dream of that?
I have a great example. I have a patient. It is a woman which lived in country and have a very simple interest for life. But in one dream, she bring me a dream where she looks, девочки, мальчики, помогайте, буквы на небе.
Letters on the sky.
Letters,
Letters in the
yes, some
sky.
letters on the sky. She draw these letters, and few some years she firstly visited Greece, and in the hotel they ask a reception customer what it is this draw can meaning. And the customer tells that she wrote in Greece evolution.
You see? Another example. So this is information. Where does this come from? You see, it's the unconscious layer that we are carrying that has got so much information for us, and we want to honor the mystery of it. That's not childhood repression. That is something else that is bigger than one's personal life, but how are we going to live it personally is the question. Yeah. That's our aim. How do we live it personally? Anyone else have a comment?
I can add after that, I believe in collective unconscious. Absolutely.
You know
I
what? Well, you think about it, that is the collective unconscious. It is amazing. Look back at your dreams. You will find the collective unconscious in all kinds of ways, all kinds of images, all kinds of symbols. It will be there. You can trust that it's there. It makes our personal life incredibly valuable. So, you know, we are all grains of sand, but we are all necessary to make up a whole beach. So each grain of sand is individual, special part of the story. Okay, so if we go on to paragraph 204, again, Jung reiterates that the unconscious contains all those psychic components that are below the threshold. And then he says, and all the material not yet reaching consciousness. I want to ask you, what do you think it takes for the material to reach consciousness? What does it take?
I think it's kind of penetrating some filters in my mind from unconsciousness to the mind, to the consciousness.
Yeah, so we could say, what are the filters that each of us have that prevents us from opening to the unconscious? We all have them. Are we scared, worried, uneasy, depressed, upset, too happy, too content, eating too much chocolate? Something like that. In other words, are we opening ourselves to the unconscious? Are we saying, okay, I'll take some of the filters away? You don't how would I say this? You don't have to worry about falling apart, do you? If you take the filters, do you think you would fall apart?
Well, there is a possibility that some ancient fears can come.
Yes, yes, but then also that allows one to realize your strength. So some things awful come from the unconscious. Those could be bad relationships, a difficult time in life, a challenge you can't get through, any kind of difficulty, but that makes you strong, doesn't it? Some people, let me some people are too open to the unconscious. They don't have enough filter. Those people need some real boundaries. They need to learn that. But other people actually need to learn to be open to the unconscious because of our world. Our world goes so fast. Where is the time for the unconscious to go through? Where? If you're always on Facebook, you won't get to the unconscious. If you take some time every day to just be, whatever that is, the unconscious can come through, and time to pay attention to dreams as well. You don't have to spend too much time, but you do have to spend time contemplating, listening to yourself, wondering, why did this happen? What is going on? That's being open to the unconscious.
About dreams, it's understood. But what about daydreaming and fantasy? Is that the same material or it's another material?
You know, I think it comes maybe from a different place. I'm not sure. But I think it's material to value. So say you are exercising or you're on a walk or you're doing, and all of a sudden you have this marvelous fantasy. Put it down. What is it doing there? Is that just a fantasy or is that something, boom, oh, I want that. That is important. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the things come forward in our life for a meaning, a meaningful way. So the unconscious is always working. The question is, are we paying attention? It's always there, always there. You don't have to worry about accessing it. You know, just open the door. It's there. It's there for sure.
First of all, we can ask what is dream, because unconscious worked every minute, but conscience work only on the day.
That is true. In addition to that, let me read you what Jung says here, again in paragraph 204. We have reason to suppose that the unconscious is never quiescent, never quiet, in the sense of being inactive, but is ceaselessly engaged in grouping and regrouping its contents. So the unconscious, it's like it's always mixing things. It's always moving. It's like always cooking. So you think, it's always cooking. You think the day, you plan your day. It's going to be this way. This is the way my day will be today. Boom, something comes in. Why? Supposed to. Wanted to take you off course. The unconscious is working. Always moving things around, which makes life a mystery, not determined, right? Look at your schedule. The day is this, it goes off. Oh, it happened to us all last week. I had the time wrong. Alexander also had the time wrong. And everything had to change. And again, my apologies to all of you, but maybe it was for a reason. That's what I said to myself. I said it to Alexander as well. For a reason, something was happening here. And you were all very kind to be so understanding. I hope you could fill it with something else. But you see, there's the unconscious moving. I knew it. What is going on unconsciously that this happened? Okay, just asking the question honors the fact that the unconscious is always moving.
Susan, could you tell me a little more about subliminal sense perceptions? Because when I thought about it, first thought was about body sensation.
Yes.
But is it only about body or maybe something else?
How about body and psyche? How about both?
Mhm.
Sense perceptions. Sense is not just physical.
Mhm.
It is physical, but it is also mental, isn't it? You have in both body and psyche, you can have an anxiety sense perception. Anxious. It comes across different. Your mind is going, but in your body, and each of us is going to have a different body reaction. Some people have tension here. I'm anxious. They get a stomach ache. They have a headache. Sense perception. So thank you for bringing in the body. I'm glad you said that, because the unconscious speaks to us physically as well. How we take care of our bodies, how our body feels to us, how we pay attention, how we nourish ourselves. Those are all sense perceptions. How keenly, closely do we pay attention to sense perceptions? We all live in a world where people go, oh, I feel nervous. I think I'll have a glass of beer, wine, smoke a joint, something, right? Rather than sit with my sense perception. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Yeah. But let us keep in mind what you said, because it is important. The unconscious speaks through the body as well. Just
But I'm
think
sorry,
about it.
can we tell that unconscious is more, is closer to body than our conscience? It's a type of, but my thoughts, I try to understand how it works. Why do we have conscience and unconscious? Why human so complicated? Do animals the same or not? And maybe this part our psyche is divided in conscience and unconscious because we have a kind of instinctual life of body, and life of our mind because of the society. And that's why we have to make this connection between conscience and unconscious, and sometimes it works well, but sometimes something goes wrong. And for example, the signals from our body we can feel sometimes only through the unconscious, because we too much in our mind and we doesn't pay enough attention to it, for example.
Yes, so I just wanted to add to what you were saying, because you brought up a couple of some good points, but some questions also. So we can all ask, do animals think?
Yes.
Well, they think to a point, right? If you have a pet, your pet thinks to a point, but then they stop thinking. They can't, the brain is not made to, you know, your dog can follow you, but your dog doesn't know how to differentiate this yard from that yard. I mean, so it's the dog, they can do it only so far. Instinct works so far. The dog will have a different instinct than us, but we can't just live on instinct alone, and that's part of our thought process. We need instinct, but we also need to evaluate our instinct and how it is working and how it feels right or not. I think that again, these are all like on a continuum. So what is Jung called it? Instinct and spirit. So there's a continuum between. It's like between psyche and body. It's not separate. It's on a moving continuum, always moving and changing, just like conscious and unconscious is doing, always moving and always changing. Why are we not simple? Because we're not. Because we're complex. Because we don't have answers. Thank goodness. We can't get to Mars yet, if you've noticed. We're not on Mars. So we're still simple, but we're trying to figure it out. What you touch on is the mystery of what it is to be a person. And this is what Jung is trying to get into with the conscious and the unconscious. There is a mystery there. How do we solve it? How do we work with it? And how do each of us answer it in different ways? And how do we sit with the fact that there is no answer? See, that's the other thing. There's really no answer. There's a Jungian analyst named, he's American, was Nathan Schwartz Salant, and he wrote an interesting book called The Mystery of Human Relationships. He speaks about relationships, but it really is the mystery of what it is to be a person. And he's kind of talking about what Jung is saying as well. He's a very good writer. I don't think he's in Russian yet, but if you ever find him, he's good. So somebody else had a comment on that? No? Did I
Yes.
answer? Yeah, go ahead, Alexander. Yeah.
I'm sorry, my rationality in my question,
Go
but
ahead.
not far ago in our class in Moscow Psychoanalysis Institute, we have analyzed the history of human being and so on. And one of key output is that the history of human being, especially with at least starting use the brain, is about like from era of hunting and gathering. So let's take 30,000 years.
Okay.
So just mathematically, it means for me that the base or the big volume, just maybe about 70% of our collective unconsciousness patterns of behavior is taking roots in that era of hunting and gathering, when people were doing these activities.
Mhm.
And all behavioral patterns and maybe basic archetypes by Jung, we should search or investigate in those human being patterns. Do you agree with this version or not?
Not exactly certain what you are getting at. Can you say again what you are
Yeah.
getting at?
Okay, just if we take the history of human being, of people,
Yeah, yep,
the only 500 years we think about some science or
yeah,
technology
yeah,
and this level of comfort what we have.
yeah,
But like 30,000 years
right,
before,
yeah,
the human actually had been living in another conditions
yeah.
and patterns of behavior. So in my opinion, maybe as a historian by first education, so the volume of experience makes sense.
Yes.
So,
Yeah,
and it reflects proportion of roots of maybe archetypes or of our patterns of unconscious behavior now.
yeah. So
So
let me, yeah,
if we take rational math, so for me, it's quite logically, but I just want your opinion to know.
okay. So let me add, because maybe somebody else also has got an idea. You know, there is, and I'll see if this fits with what you're saying. There are studies now that people far younger than all of us, little kids, their brains are going to be different because they begin life with a computer. So the algorithm is changing the brain structure. And, oh, okay, I'll look at that. Or Elena, you read it afterwards. However, so the brain structure I think you're talking about with the hunter-gatherers has changed over time. And we now, each day, have more information than has been ever. Nobody before, no one before, from Russia to the United States sat at a computer like we are doing and communicated like this. It's going to change our brains. And that is going to cause us, supposedly, scientifically, rationally, that's what they're saying, it is going to cause us to live differently. So that people in 500 years might be very different than now. We don't know. And then within that is a question, not just our brain, but the cultures that we live in. So we live in a culture where we have to handle boom, 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 fast. But in 500 years, it might be faster, might be slower, it might be different. We might get born and they'll put a computer in our head. Who knows? Who knows? The era changes always, depending on the culture the collective. And that's going to influence the unconscious, but the unconscious will always influence conscious life as well, no matter what. No matter what. Even if we're hunter-gatherers, we're still going to have in our unconscious, we're going to have a lion, we'll have a panther, we'll have a rabbit. We have them now. So they had them in the hunter-gatherer time. So some things are similar and some very different. You watch little kids now. They don't, and they automatically push a button. Automatically. They don't dial. They push the button. It's a different world.
But fingers are still the same fingers as 30,000 years ago.
Exactly. Exactly. So the structure might be the same. Here's the conscious and unconscious. It's used differently. Yeah. So in 500 years, people will dream about how we communicate, but they'll be communicating differently because they probably will still have fingers, even maybe because they're all texting, they will have larger thumbs. Yeah. Elena, you had a comment? You put it in the chat.
Yes, I just I marked some sentence which were important for me, and the last two sentences in paragraph 219 was important for me because it were about thought patterns. Mhm.
Yes, thank you. 219 is way farther.
Mhm.
But thought patterns, it fits now as well, because, so here's one of the dangers and one of the good things. You don't want to get too caught in a thought pattern. You want to honor it, but make room for it to grow as well. Thought patterns. So we all get raised with certain thought patterns. They can be rigid or they can be expansive. Thought patterns. It is like you think, okay, I'm going to go from here to there. How will I get there? Thought pattern. You probably think, I would imagine, I don't know, that you will get from here to there, your thought pattern, you'll get on the subway, won't you? Do you get on the, no, you don't get on the subway.
About the possibility just go from point A to point B. Sometimes I change my
Good.
I try to change my way.
Perfect.
Mhm.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. Right. So that we all have a way of going from A to B, but sometimes will we change it? Also in our thoughts and our habits as well. So here's the difference with the animal. The animal has got predictable thought patterns. They will follow the routine. Bam. They know the routine. They don't usually like to go outside of the routine. And people also can be very rigid with their routines. And it can be dangerous. Equally, it can be dangerous if you don't have any rules at all. So either way, you want to be aware of, how do I want to take this route today? What do I want to do? So you allow for some freedom in there.
I agree with you, but when I talked about thought patterns, maybe I thought about Alexander's words about what is the basis of our actions, for example, or thoughts. And for me, how I understood that article, main idea which I got was that maybe archetypes are that kind of thought patterns, and it works like instinct, and maybe we can do it wider or change it, but on the first moment it work like instinct.
Yeah, it very much can. You know, we're out of time, but I think that we want to be aware again. Just watch it today. Well, you're at evening, but watch your thought patterns, how they automatically come in, and how open are you to shift them. Some you don't want to shift. Some you'll want to shift, for sure. Okay, so let me ask you, if we're going to be on our schedule, we would meet again next week. Is that correct? Got it? We're all on next week.
Yes, it's our schedule too.
Good. So we will return to our pattern, right? Okay. All right. Take care.
Take
Have a
care.
good-
Bye bye.
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 Thank you.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Goodbye.